Stakes, obstacle, and through line are the propellers, and they start to go, and if they don't, you're going to use substitution in order to bring up whatever it is that's not viscerally connected. The subtext is what starts to flow through as you know who you're speaking to and what you're speaking about. The who am I is the character not only that you're using to put up on the blackboard of who am I as the self, you're also using the who am I that you're speaking to and the substitution of what you're putting behind their name as well, right? In the subtext of what you're writing underneath all of your lines so that you can get a deeper distinction of a visceral connect of who it is you're speaking to. Once you have all of that, if you still have kind of like, it doesn't fit exactly right, the piece of the puzzle doesn't fit perfectly, what's the overall through line? You should use every tool, every time, anyway, but here's a kind of a system of, I got the train going, but it sort of derails a little bit. If you already have power, it cannot be a power scene. Truly, you know, if you already have power, it's got to be a love scene. If you already have love, it can't be a love scene. Truly, you're going to know. If it's about love, I already have love from him, then it's got to be about power. So it becomes really quite simple to see. It may be oxymoronic to your own mind, like I can't see that, but if you start to play through, you will. It just means that maybe you're really codependent or you're really controlling, so you can't see it. But the more you play, your life is actually opening and growing. So when you use the overall driving force, what you begin to get a sense is what's driving the train, what's taking those propellers and starting to move them, what's taking those 8 little trains and starting to actually get them going around the track. And each one of these little trains is going to fit perfectly into the next one. If you have the wrong stakes, obstacle and through line will not come up. If you have the wrong substitution, no subtext will come up, because if I don't care about dating him, why am I thinking about what he might be thinking about me? So it means I've got to re-look at what that substitution is for that who am I. So the overall driving force drives the scene. It actually causes the train to want to go. The previous circumstance is what sets up the scene's beginning to begin from impossibility. When a scene is impossible to begin, you know it's ready to begin. When was the last time you went to do something that you really cared about, where everything just lined up perfectly? If there's any thought at all, it didn't. You want to create a previous obstacle that makes it impossible to begin, because what happens when you're on your way to a great date? You made a mistake. You had a thought. And that thought is not based in, he's going to be even better looking than I think. If perfection is occurring, there is no thought, which means you're not looking to see how good life is because you're just an experiencer experiencing. And when perfection is occurring, you write it off as no time. You do not remember, recall, or retain it. You remember, recall, and retain the problems. And you go back to what the problems are to denote whether your life is working or not. Silly, silly people. So do I if I'm not careful and aware. So you want to have a previous circumstance that makes it impossible to begin the scene, mostly because for cold reads, it's actually going to take you from your own previous circumstance of your own obstacle of what if the casting director doesn't like me, and put you inside a piece of business that makes it impossible to begin, which actually requires your mind's thought. And in that thought, it pulls you out of the memory of your own pathology into what you've set up that needs your attention, attending to it, that as you forget to remember the audition and has you involved with the event. As an actor, no human being, when you came here this morning, you did not come from nowhere. How many of you came from nowhere? How many of you came from somewhere? How many of you came here this morning with an obstacle? Yeah, most of you. And if you didn't, it'll take me about 30 seconds to get your mind to remember, like, oh, I wasn't even thinking about that obstacle. We are motivated by obstacle because it's what we remember, retain, that we actually call our life. If I have no obstacle, I have no memory of me. If I have no memory of me, I don't exist. I must have an obstacle in order to cause thinking so that I know who I am. And thinking is obstacle related. So a previous obstacle is the previous circumstance to the being here. As an actor in a scene, you have a previous circumstance as well. Even if the writer's a great writer and he wrote a previous circumstance to the scene that you're in, you still have to have a substitution to the distinction of your own analogy to the parable of the stakes of the scene that the writer set up, so that you and character become one. So there isn't you playing your character, but you and your character are in action.